व्यक्तिहरूको जनता समाजको प्रिय corruption adversely affects each and every sector
any
of the
sort of
country.
ideology. This is a great location for Nepal to explore its potential.
Namaste. Welcome to Nepal's Top 7 Debaters 2014, produced by Leadership Academy. In today's episode, we are featuring the journey from competition to final round of the winner of Nepal's Top 7 Debaters 2014, Category 4, Grade 10, 11 and 12, English Language, Ms. Tanvi Agrawal of Grade 11 from Modern Indian School.
Human and drug traffickers should be entitled to death sentence.
Death penalty, saving more innocent lives. Every year, 5 to 7,000 Nepali women and children are trafficked into forced prostitution. Thousands of Nepalese women and children, those who are trafficked, are below the age of 16. BBC reports state that Nepal has a population of 3 crore 5 lakh, out of which 1 lakh 50,000 are drug addicts and 70% of them are criminals. Now, for example, India, it is the largest democratic state and still observes capital punishment in offences like murder, terrorism and betraying of the state. So why can't we in Nepal do justice to millions by observing the same punishment for such wild savage beasts with whom we can have no society nor security? They not only make the victims' life more miserable than death, but also spread terrorism among citizens and betray the state. I believe capital punishment to an extent can also reduce the expenses, as keeping criminals like Kasab in jail even for a year costed rupees 50 crore to the Indian government. Small punishments will not deter the number of traffickers. Winston Soto III said, if we look at the dictionary, that also means to inhibit. When we remove such criminals from the face of the earth, we're actually inhibiting them from doing it again. It took 10 years for drug trafficking to resurface in the Philippines after Marcos administration sentenced Slim San by firing squad. A country like China, having largest population and geographical area, observes a crime rate of only 1%, owing to capital punishment setting right examples. I conclude by saying that if a man is a danger to the society, is threatening it, then his execution for the preservation and healing of the common good is to be commended, for there is no parallel between death and even the most miserable life. Thank you.
For the grade 10, 11 and 12, I would think you can do much better than today. In 2012 and 2013, this category has been the most competitive among all the 6 categories we have. So I would say that most of you could not convince us either way, whether we should give a death penalty to the traffickers of humans and drugs or whether we should not. And even the data has varied from one person to another. So, the data has to be correct. When you debate, you can't just throw any figure. Some of you have mugged up your debate. That should never happen in a debate competition. You can have your notes and data just to support not to guide you. Counter argument was almost none. So, in a debate, you always have to listen to what your opponents have to say. And if you're the first one, you have to pre-calculate what counter arguments would be coming up, and that's how you become a smart debater. Asking questions, some of you did that. In English debate, you don't ask questions. In Nepali debate, it makes an impact, but we're not here to answer your questions. We're here to judge you, and we can't judge you if you start asking us questions, right? So also for 1 or 2 of the debaters, use a gender balanced language, like he, his is not enough. No, you have to use he or she. You have to bring both the genders into the context. So some of you who are going to make it to the next round, please work hard and maintain the standard of this category.
You guys actually presented a lot of enthusiasm. There were certain good reasoning and evidences that were portrayed. But in some, when you when you have a certain source, the sources were not quoted. So it would be really nice to know where you actually got the information or data from, and it's more informative. And in some, I think it was not that convincing. You sort of engaged me in the beginning, But then the enthusiasm and the engagement sort of fluttered in the end. The confidence, I would say, was not that great. Some of you portrayed a lot of confidence, but in some I could not see that. And second of all, the points of information put forward by most of the debate participants, it was so-so. It was not that convincing.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. I thought, contrary to what the other judges said, you all did really, really well. There are areas where there could be some improvement, which I'll talk about, but I thought you were brilliant. It's very hard to get up there and talk in front of the cameras to judges that you don't know, so I thought you were fantastic. So keep up the good work. You all did a lot of research. Clearly you prepared, you were well spoken, you made logical arguments in most cases, so well done. I think the group that were arguing against the motion had the easier task, actually, because it's harder to argue for the death penalty when you're protecting human rights, when that is in itself, I think, clearly a breach of human rights. But the group that argued for did extremely well. There were a few areas where I thought I could have learned more from you. One was the economics of all of this. Of course, there is a justice component to this and a human rights component, but economically, if you look at the countries that do have the death penalty, like the US, it's hugely expensive. Actually, it's much more expensive because most of these people stay on death row for their entire lives anyway, than it is to have some kind of restorative process of justice. So you could have touched on the economics of it. Also, the capacity of the legal system to deal with this. Some of you brought up this idea that people could be executed by mistake, that they perhaps weren't guilty. Does the legal system in Nepal, for example, does it have the capacity to deal with these cases effectively? You also tended, most of you, to focus on Nepal, but the question was actually much broader than that. And it would have been good to look at some other countries. I think it was Tanvi mentioned the Philippines, which was good. You know, I would have liked to have heard some stuff from elsewhere. A few points very quickly on techniques. I think you should make sure you use all the time you have. There are a couple of you that didn't quite do that. You should definitely speak slowly. Mostly you were quite good at that, but it's always worth reiterating. Use your hands and eye contact with us in order to emphasize your points. I thought Shrijan was very good at that. Statistics, again, I would say make sure you quote what source they're coming from. Otherwise, it seems like you're picking them out of thin air. Yogesh was good at that. Tanvi was good at that as well. Make emotional appeals to us. I think facts are good, but emotional appeals convince people better. Ruchit, you were good at that. And keep the language logical and formal. Don't ever drop into sort of slang, which a couple of you did at one point. But overall, fantastic. Well done. And keep up the good work.
We're not going to rank you today because it's just 8 of you and we'll have to let 2 of you go today. I'll announce the name of 2 of you and I will wish you best wishes for your life and for your future debating, right? And the rest 6 of you who is going to the next round, all the best. And please work harder than you are doing right now. Yogesh and Dasan, we'll have to let you go from today's competition. Yogesh and Dasan, please come forward. And rest of you, best wishes for the future ones.
Nepal should invest in nuclear power.
No, nuclear power is not the solution. It is risky, costly, and leaves a legacy of hazardous waste. According to Texas study, people living near to these plants are very much prone to various forms of cancer, even if the plant has an accident-free record. Now, the international press identifies Nepal as one of the countries least prepared for disaster management, posing a threat to the national security and an attractive site for the terrorists. According to WWF, the Chernobyl disaster forced evacuation and resettlement of 4 lakh people. The 3 Mile Island disaster that happened, it triggered a cleanup action plan that lasted for 15 years. Now, let us consider an example. In Finland, a new generation power plant was established, which is now facing numerous problems with cost overrun of 25% of $4 billion budget. Now, I believe the subsidies provided could have been much better utilized in providing clean and safe energy, like hydel and wind power do. They would have also benefited the local communities. In Nepal, we think like 1,000 times before investing in wind power, solar power or hydel power. Then how can we even go on the imagination of building a nuclear power plant? According to Reuters, the NRC chairman, Gregory Jagsko, cast an extraordinary dissenting vote when it came to building of a nuclear power plant in US in 30 years, saying he cannot neglect the fact of Fukushima. Now we are all aware of the cases of Fukushima, the 3 Mile Island and the Chernobyl. These are the flagship cases. All could have been avoided, but for mismanagement, corruption, secrecy, and profiteering. Now, all these terms are to be kept in mind when we are talking of a nation like ours. I conclude by saying that Nepal should rather invest and harness what it really is blessed with, rather than going on something that is really far-fetched, like building of a nuclear plant. Thank you.
Today's debate was not engaging. It's a topic that can engage any audience in any country. Right? It's a global debate. It's not a very difficult topic at all. But as a judge, I was very disoriented because the contents were not clear. It was like listening to an essay or a public speaking, and that too you have mocked up. So when you have mocked up, it becomes very difficult when you're nervous, because it kind of holds you back.
I think that you all did a really great job despite some of the criticisms. I think that it's important to show that you've done a lot of research and to really cite the sources of the information that you found. And I've found that the most powerful speeches so far covered statistics, and I think that it's also important that you don't pause and like you're recollecting a script, but just keep going and try to really engage the audience, like Santosh was saying. But overall, well done.
I think you did very well, all of you. I think it's impressing. It impressed me that youngsters like you're concerned about a topic like nuclear energy. I mean, in Denmark, the youth of your age, they are mostly watching X Factor, and they don't get involved in political issues like this. So I think that you did very well. I'm impressed. I think that you could maybe have talked a bit more about the risks of earthquakes in Nepal, because there is a history of that, and everybody's like fearing the next one. You have a history with Bhaktapur in 34, and that I would have liked to have that as part of your argumentation. And I think that the human risks are also a very important factor when you talk about nuclear energy, because when we look at Chernobyl in '86 and Fukushima in 2011, 10,000s, if not 100,000s of people have lost their homes and have been evacuated. And we still have around 100,000 people in Fukushima who can't go back because the government fear the consequences. So there are some consequences of nuclear power that I would have liked to hear more about. But overall, I think you did very well.
My worthy opponent just stated that lack of rain can be a cause that hydel power do not work properly. But I would like to tell that uranium, it is depleting with each year, and with each successive plant, the cost of uranium will always rise. And with the depletion of uranium, we cannot really expect Nepal to invest in it. Moreover, he said that the nuclear power plants do not depend on the climatic factors. Well, my worthy opponent, I would like to tell you that it only depends on the climatic factors, because now if there is any disaster like tsunami or anything else like in Nepal, it is the 11th it is the country which ranks 11th globally when it comes to highest earthquake prone areas. And if such a calamity occurs, what will happen, we all can imagine it very well. And moreover, he said that okay, that's it. I would like to end my rebuttal.
Well, the good news for you all today is there's going to be no elimination, because two of our debaters, Shivani Mishra and Ayusha Adhikari, backed out for this competition. And it's kind of sad to lose them because I judged them last time. They both are very good debaters, and I'm sure they could have, if they tried, they could have made it to the semi-final round. So that's saying I have to provide something today. So for the first time in 2014, I'm going to give you the ranks. We all judges have agreed that Tanvi Agrawal was the best in today's debate, whereas last time Tanvi, you struggled. It's a very good improvement. Ruchit Shrestha, we have ranked you second. And the major reason is your rebuttal was very good. Your first presentation, you struggled. And third is Prasanna Jang Thapa. You're very good with the first competition, but in the rebuttal, you really slowed down in your pace, in your presentation, in your content. So you have to try to balance. Because if you go to the final, there will be 4 rounds. So you could do the first one, then if you miss the next 3 ones. And then Srijan, you were the 4th today. You really have to work very hard. Next competition is going to be very tough. So you really have to work very hard.
Traditional technology should be mandatory for construction in Nepal.
Technology means the application of scientific knowledge to practical uses. And when we combine this word technology with traditional, it itself explains that traditional technology is scientific, practical, and efficient. Technology should be such that it is socially appropriate and environmentally sustainable. Traditional technology can help solve 4 major problems of our country, that are poverty, starvation, unemployment, and urban migration. The traditional technology can also help the low-income communities do better and have a better quality life by using resources and skills that are available at hand. According to the Handicraft Association of Nepal, the handicraft has a wide industry, and it supports alone, the handicraft alone supports 3 lakh people. The handicrafts are also very much idle for exporting because they are low in volume and high in value, resulting in large shipments to over 62 countries worldwide. According to the Export Council of Nepal, the carpets alone form the largest exported items in Nepal, earning $135 million for the country every year. Now that's a handsome lot when we are talking of a nation like ours. Also, the handicraft industries, they employ a number of women, which helps in women empowerment. These handicraft industries have also made an identity for the Nepalese abroad. The traditional technology makes use of the resources which are available in our own homeland. For example, the usage of bajra instead of limestone. As bajra is readily available, it is affordable by all, and above all, it is much stronger than limestone is. Now, according to Kathmandu Post in 2006 in Dhading, there was a devastating flood that threatened the lives of 50,000 villagers. But all that was relieved when the villagers found out that the traditional technology of ghata could be transformed into a small business, which is still helping them out. Now, according to the Indian ideological leader Mahatma Gandhi, he advocated for technology that was small, local, and predominantly village-based, so as to make the villages of India self-reliant. Also, he disagreed with the technology that benefited only a minority at the cost of majority, or the technology which replaced the minority just in order to increase the profit by a few numbers. As also very truly said by Dr. Ernst Frederick, small is beautiful. I would like to conclude by saying that I would rather like to call traditional technology as the appropriate technology for our nation, which is very much required and mandatory. Thank you.
Quite a diversity of techniques among the 4 of you. I think the first speaker just needs to work on being more fluid with your argument. The second speaker, very good presentation skills. Another good point was that you seemed to believe in what you were saying. The third speaker, I would say you have a very determined presentation skill, but sometimes that can alienate the listener. Whereas the last person that spoke had a very more relaxed presentation skill, which was easier to listen to. I think overall you were covering as a group many of the key issues, but I didn't find one of you with a really coherent argument which followed through all the way through. The last speaker, I liked the way that you gave an example. That's very good, but then you need to back it up with evidence. And I think when you're talking for and against technology, it's very easy to lump all of points into good and bad, you know, whether it's about sort of culture and maybe the poor or good technology is all about speed and production. And actually there's points that feed into both the arguments. So I think overall as a group you're covering many of the topics, but I'd like to see you just having a clearer argument all the way through when you're talking.
Tanvi, very confident. You were showing the rest of the audience that you knew what you're talking about. You had a lot of examples, and to quote Mahatma Gandhi was really important, because that's an area that really that a lot of people in the world talk about. And you also have proved how the rural areas have really got improved because of following his philosophy. Really impressive way of presenting, and your body language was so good so that others would really believe in what you're saying. Equally, you did very well. Like very impressive the way you brought out the points, and very argumentative, very logical, and you had a lot of points to speak about. Very well done, and we are looking forward to see more from you all, and to really talk on the topic and also use more statistics. And of course, there are a lot more research done on this topic, so to see whether you all have really done your homework.
Construction is merely not restricted to the infrastructure area. It is the overall development of a nation. And when a person is talking about the carpets and garments, it is actually giving us the insight of what the nation possesses. For example, a building, a 12-story building for an example, we do not start building from the top. We always look at the base. And for a base, we need to know what our nation has its strengths and weaknesses. And for knowing that, I believe that traditional technology is the best way to know that, because it gives us the insight that what the nation's strengths and weaknesses are. Also, one of my worthy opponents stated that the traditional technology slows down the construction rate, but that is not true, because as I have mentioned earlier, that a multi-story building needs a base. And for base, we need traditional technology. We cannot start building from the top. Okay, thank you.
I agree with the comments. It was not easy for us because you all have done very well. And there was time that we have to really discuss who the first two are, and then the third and the fourth. So accordingly, the best speaker for today's episode is Prasanna Jung Thapa, becomes the first. And second is Tanvi Agrawal, and third is Ruchit Shrestha, and the fourth is Richan Baral. And wish you all the best, and especially for those who have come first and second, that you will move on to the next stage. And of course, you have a great future forward. So it was just neck to neck kind of a competition.
Asia superpower, India or China?
Next we have Tanvi Agrawal of Modern Indian School studying in grade 11. She will be speaking in favor of China.
Superpower means an extremely powerful nation, especially one capable of influencing the events, acts and policies of less powerful nations. Going by the basic facts, India is the 7th largest economy, whereas China is the 2nd largest economy. In terms of per capita GDP, China is far ahead of India with $7,500 compared to $1,100 of India. Well, the agricultural sector of China is far more developed than that of India, according to the Hindustan Times. Also, the Chinese economy has been helping, supporting and growing the global economy as a whole. Well, also the manufacturing hub that the China possesses, it is very strong. That means that it can offer employment to a larger section of its population as compared to India. Lately, China has been helping out indebted countries like Greece and expanding its influence. Also, clearly, China is a very important creditor to the US, which means that it holds significant amount of pressure in bilateral talks. According to the World Bank reports, there were significant efforts made by India in order to improve its literacy rate. But in 2011, it was merely 74% for India, whereas China was at 95%. The health situations are no different. Even today, India is 11 years below in life expectancy than China. Professor Amartya Sen argues that the explosive growth of China is because of their investments in health and educational sectors, where India has underinvested, giving a poor support to the human capital. Also, China is far ahead of India in terms of infrastructure. Lately, China has offered 30% financial loans to India in order to build infrastructural projects. Well, the communist country also outnumbers the combat power of India by a ratio of 3:1. China is the only Asian nation that is in veto power in UNSC. Well, also the former PM Manmohan Singh, he said in a conference that India has been declining in its relative position in the world of science. Well, this shows that India has been overtaken by countries like China. Also, in 2012 London Olympics, China had secured second rank with 88 medals compared to just 6 medals of India, which got 55th rank. Well, also, we can look at the CWG games that we had in India. It was a complete chaos. Whereas in Olympics, which were hosted by China, they were far better and far more impressive. So I would like to conclude by saying that this is the reason why India cannot match with China. And moreover, natural resources plus the nuclear status plus size of population, economic growth with infrastructure, all this accounts for a superpower which currently is China and not India. Thank you. My worthy opponent, no matter how you categorize India and China, whether in terms of GDP, by any reports, by the World Bank or by your own, but the thing is that China will always outpower India, whether it is in whatever terms. And whatever he said about the assumptions, those are not my assumptions. I have stated that they are according to World Bank or Hindustan Times. Well, in his first speech of 3 minutes, he said that the Chinese government, it is unstable. But then, in a democracy like India, where the government, it aims at short-term plans so that it can get reselected. For example, in 2009, there was a case where rupees 75,000 crore was waived off, which was given to the farmers according to the government. But then that is still being debated whether that was actually received by the deserving recipients or not. But yes, it definitely and certainly helped the government to get reselected. Also, China comprises of an authoritarian government. Well, that's all for the rebuttal right now. Thank you.
Tanvi, I liked how you defined superpower at the outset. I was a debater myself when I was in high school. It's a clever technique because you define the parameters yourself and then how the judges will determine whether you've achieved the goal or not. So that was well done on your part.
Tanvi, I found you are more confident. The other one, you have more influential speaking power. That's it's good, and you have more confidence also. I don't know how you build up that one. And so the point I love is that when you first speak, you started with the definition, which is very, very important. Prasanna talks on more politics, but you talk on sports and some other issues. Somehow it is good, but you should add some more information about politics too. The presentation is okay. Body language is also is good. Thank you.
Tanvi Agrawal, right? Your personality is fine, but still you require to be groomed well. You are on a show. You are talking about a country. You are talking something about China and India. Okay, and you're a part of the Asian country, and definitely you can groom yourself very well. Presentation is something that everyone look for. Confidence, yes, you have immense, percentage of confidence. Contents knowledge, yes. Similarly, which I told Mr. Prasanna Jang, that economy or the GDP is just not enough. You require updates of SWOT, the nuclear power, the tourism, events, politics, which are really, lacking side by side. You've got to just keep on updating. In terms of argument, I'm sure, being a female, you have immense potential to argue and get your way out. Go ahead, congratulations.
Well, my opponent talks about sports not being important in terms of superpower. Well, my opponent, I would like to correct you here, because if we take a family into consideration, in that case, a family will only invest in games if it is educationally fit, it is health-wise fit, and above all, it is economically strong. So sports, the scenario of sports do give us an example, or it gives us the proof that the country is very strong. Then secondly, he mentioned about the countries having ties with China, which are bad and stuff, but we can always change our friends, but we cannot change our neighbors. India does not have very good political situations with the neighbors like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, whereas all these countries are in favor of China. Then also, I would like to talk about the corruption. In both the countries, corruption prevails, China as well as India. But why is it that China is successful, whereas India is still lagging behind? The reason is that China cannot tolerate anything at the cost of their own nation. When they can execute high officials as high as Yango, then it sets an example for rest of the public. And moreover, in India, the officials are free and they are fearless because not even the penalties are imposed properly. Well, that's all for the rebuttal. Thank you. Well, my worthy opponent, seems like you're not very well updated with the facts, because yesterday in a speech made by Indian PM Mr. Narendra Modi, he clearly stated that in order to make India at par with China, it still needs to compare in the three factors, that is speed of execution, scale of production, and skill of labor. That is one point. Secondly, about the diaspora. China is very much passionate about its diaspora and has made investments in it, whereas India still needs to acknowledge that and make that a strong area where it really needs to work right now. Well, thank you.
The confidence level, I think, as you go on, you can find, it's improving, as the time passes. Just, for Mr. Prasanna, it's just that I'm quite worried about, your expression. You have a little kind of a setback. Why do you hold behind? Don't hold behind. Push yourself, That's what is required. Where Tanvi is concerned, she's quite nervous, that's fine. But, she's able to express herself. This is what we look for, Unless until you speak, nobody will come to know exactly what's happening. All the best.
Tanvi, as my friend told, that you seem a little nervous this time. But anyway, you have indicated some of the good points.
Tanvi, I think, again, you just sort of continued with the strength you had in the first two rounds. Your third round was a little weaker, but your fourth round was really solid. And I think quoting Modi, whom we know as the Indian Prime Minister, was a masterstroke. I thought that was really clever. So, well done, both of you.
Winner is Tanvi Agrawal with 261. Congratulations. All the best.
You can call us at 425-7250 for feedback or email us at leadershipacademyktm@gmail.com. Have a nice week. Namaste.